Today, I'll reveal the most common ways Band 7, 8 and 9 students begin their answers in the speaking test. We've analysed all of our high-level speaking performances to find out exactly which openings work best so that you can improve your score. I've also put this into an ebook for you and you can download that at the end. So in the IELTS speaking test, examiners ask various question types such as preferences, opinions, past experiences, hypothetical questions, and many, many more. We'll explore each category in this short quiz, so you'll see exactly how high-level candidates typically start their answers. Ready? Let's begin. Question 1. When asked about preferences, for example, do you prefer to study in the morning or at night? Which of these openings is the most common amongst our high-level candidates? A. Yes, definitely. I prefer morning because it's quieter. B. I'd say I generally prefer mornings simply because. C. Actually, my preference changes all the time, so it depends. Or D. I used to prefer mornings, but not anymore.
I'd say I generally prefer mornings simply because.
So in our analysis, 37% of Band 7, 8 and 9 students start preference answers with a short, direct modal statement, like I'd say I generally prefer or I'd rather. This approach shows clarity and immediate focus on the answer. So for preference questions, start it with a direct answer and then follow it up with a little explanation. Question 2. When asked for an opinion, for example, do you think children should learn to cook at school? Which is the best opening? A. Yes, I completely agree, the children should. B. Actually, in my opinion, it depends on. C. No, because I think cooking is a waste of time. Or D. Well, I'm not entirely sure, but I guess yes.
Actually, I think, in my opinion, it depends on.
So actually, in my opinion, it depends on is the most commonly used approach at this level. For opinion-based openers, people normally start with a filler like well or actually, and then they clearly state their opinion. So they say, I think, or in my opinion. It sounds more conversational and it's just a direct way of opening this type of answer. Question 3. For a past experience question, for example, describe a time when you traveled somewhere new, which opening is the most common? A. I used to prefer traveling in groups, but now I go alone. B. Well, I remember last year I visited. C. Yes, traveling is amazing. I think I prefer. D. Actually, I'm not sure. Maybe next time I will.
I remember I was very young when I watched it, and
So answer B, well, I remember last year I visited, matches a narrative past-orientated question. Over 60% of Band 7 answers to describe a time questions began with a direct recall statement like I remember or it happened when or back in 2019. This clarifies that you're shifting into story mode and you have answered the question and you know exactly which tense or structure to answer the question with. So a really good tip is to think about the question that is being asked and think about the tense or grammatical structure that could easily answer that question. So if they ask you to recall a story, you're going to be using this type of phrase like I remember or back in 2019. That instantly tells the examiner not only this person has understood what I have said, but they know the correct grammar, the correct structure to answer the question. Hey, so hope you're enjoying the video. If you want a more extensive speaking course that covers much, much more, we have our free speaking course. You can download it by just clicking the link in the description. Question 4. For a hypothetical question, for example, if you could live in any city, where would you choose? How do high-level candidates typically begin their answers? A. I definitely live in London because it's vibrant. B. I will live in London because it is vibrant. C. I would probably choose London because it's vibrant. D. I choose London because it was vibrant.
would probably choose London because it's more vibrant.
So answer C is correct for a hypothetical situation. Our data shows roughly 55% of band 7, 8 and 9 speakers use would plus a verb to indicate an imaginary scenario, and accuracy and appropriacy are crucial here. So again, make sure that your grammar fits the situation that you're actually talking about. When we're talking about an imagined or unreal situation, we're going to be using these type of grammatical structures. Always be thinking of these on test day, but a better way of doing it is to think about these when you're practicing and listen back, record yourself, listen back to the actual grammatical structures that you use for the different types of question, and then you won't have to think as much on test day. You will use these more naturally. Question 5. It depends questions. So when you're unsure or you can talk about multiple sides, which opening do you think would be best? A. Well, it depends on the person because B. I think I can't decide. C. It's definitely always X. D. I've no idea.
Well, it depends on the person because
the phrase "it depends" was found in 31% of high-scoring answers for comparative type questions. Because it shows you're able to consider both sides. Examiners are listening out for a balanced approach rather than you just giving an extreme short answer. So if the examiner asks you about something where there are two sides, a really easy way of answering that question is just to think of each side and say, it depends. Some people think this, some people think that, and then you can also round it off by giving your personal opinion. Or you can use the little useful word if. If I was this person or if I was in this situation. Again, very, very easy, simple way of showing the examiner that you are not only balancing your answers, but fully developing your answers. This is particularly useful in part 3. Question 6. So for simpler part 1 questions, these are normally asking you just personal basic questions, getting to know you chit-chat type questions. Which of these beginnings is the most effective? A. I hail from a place that is widely considered. B. To be perfectly honest, I can't recall. C. I live in Manchester and it's quite. D. There's a certain logic to that question.
I live in Manchester and it's quite.
So answer C, I live in X, is the right fit for a quick, direct part 1 answer. Over 65% of band 8 and 9 students keep part 1 answers very simple and straightforward. I live in X, I work as Y, I study at Z. This direct clarity is really valued by examiners. One of the worst mistakes that you can make is starting part 1 with overcomplicated answers because they're not complicated questions. They're like, do you work or do you study? Where do you live? Asking what you do on the weekend. If in real life you were asked those questions, how would you answer them? Just using simple, direct language. If you do that, the examiner knows that you're not trying to cheat the test or you haven't been maybe taught by someone who is teaching you to sound more complicated than the test really needs to be. You can get a little bit more complicated in part 2 and part 3, but for most questions in part 1, this type of answer is the best. And of course, you can develop it more fully after you've directly answered the question, but just answer the question. Thanks for making it this far in the video. To thank you, I want to give you 10% off our VIP course. The VIP course is the most successful IELTS course in the world. We have more success stories than anyone else. That's a fact that you can verify on our website. It's the fastest, most complete way to get the score that you need. To help you out, I've given you 10% off, link in the description. Question 7, so we're getting a little bit more complicated now. For a deeper part 3 question, such as why do some people choose to live in cities rather than rural areas, which is the ideal opening? A. Yes, I completely agree with that. B. It's possible that people enjoy. C. I used to prefer rural life. D. That's an interesting question. I think some people enjoy the convenience while others.
That's an interesting question. I think some people enjoy the convenience while others are...
So answer D includes a short bridging phrase. That's an interesting question, plus an opinion or an explanation. 46% of our top scorers open part 3 answers by acknowledging the complexity. That's a tough one, that's an interesting question, and then moving in to a more balanced explanation. And part 3 demands a bit more analysis. Quickly acknowledge the question's complexity by putting in one of those phrases, and then transition into your viewpoint with reasons and examples. Don't think that you can just say, that's a tough question, and the examiner will be like, band 9. These are just, remember, the start of the questions. So how are you doing so far? Let's move on to question 8. When you have to provide a personal example, for example, can you give an example of when you learned something new? Which start is more typical for our band 7, 8 and 9 candidates? A, certainly. For example, last year I. B, it's interesting. I think in the future. C, I would like to summarize by saying. D, I have no example for that.
Certainly. For example, last year I...
So answer A, certainly, for example, is a simple, direct lead-in to a short story or anecdote. Around 39% of our successful speakers used a quick bridging word like sure, certainly, actually, plus for example, before diving into the personal story. So a really good tip is to always think about how you would answer these questions if you were in a coffee shop with your friend. If I was in a coffee shop with my friend and I said, have you watched any good TV shows recently? If they immediately responded with, for example, I watched The Sopranos last night, no one would ever answer it like that. That is why more high-level speakers will add in one of these little phrases. Sure, let me think. Yeah, for example, I was watching The Sopranos last weekend. The first time I've seen it. It's amazing. And then talk about the characters or why you like it or blah, blah, blah. Examiners are not testing you on academic English. What they want to know is, can you move to New York, London, Sydney, and speak to people, not can you speak like a robot, giving memorized answers. Thank you so much for watching this video. As promised, I've put everything into an ebook for you. You can find it and download it for free in the description. Question 9, the last one. What if you're asked something and you don't really know much about that topic? You're unsure how to ask. Which is not recommended? A, I'm not entirely sure, but if I had to guess. B, that's a tricky one. It might depend on. C, I don't really know exactly, yet I suspect. Or D, I've no idea. Next question.
I'm not entirely sure, but I guess...
Answer D is obviously not recommended, but you would not believe the number of candidates that when they get a difficult question in part 3, they just refuse to answer the question, or they say nothing, or they start laughing, maybe because they're a little bit nervous. But if you do that on exam day, what you are telling the examiner is, I don't have enough English to answer this question, not I don't have enough content or I don't have enough ideas. Every strong candidate that we worked with attempts an answer even if they are uncertain. For example, they might say, I'm not entirely sure, but, or it depends on. 90% of our band 7, 8 and 9 students at least try to give an opinion. That is telling the examiner one crucially important thing. You might not have enough knowledge to talk about this topic. You might be unfamiliar with it, but you have enough English to explain and speculate and guess about the topic. Remember, it's not an IQ test. It's not a knowledge test. It's a test of English communication. So remember, the key to strong IELTS speaking answers is appropriacy, which means choose the best opener for the specific type of question, stay accurate, and be natural. Thanks for watching. If you want more help with speaking, this is a great video. Or if you just want to have fun and improve your speaking at the same time, check out this quiz.